KKHT wants you to meet three of the classiest guys in real estate.
I am Chris Kelso, the maestro of mortgage.
I am Rob Cook, the godfather of real estate.
And I'm Joe Orsack, the king of credit swing. And together, we're
the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Much like us, real estate right now is smoking hot. So whether it's buying, selling, or owning, you need to check out the Real Estate Rat Pack.
They're here to take your calls and answer your questions live. Call now, 1-800-808-5548. And now, the Real Estate Rat Pack!
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I missed it!
You missed
What is
You
going
missed
on?
it. 3, 2, 1.
All right, so Jim Murphy's over here going, what did I do?
You missed it because you were so jealous of me.
That's right.
With Kobe right next to me. That's the reason why.
So we got a pretty exciting show today.
We do. We have a great show today.
I have been talking with Jim Murphy and Jay Karahan for some time about let's get on the air. And of course, we have a very important election coming up. I guess you want to introduce the fact we have Teresa Kennedy in the House?
Well, we've got several people in the House. Not only do we have some great individuals going to be talking about Proposition 1, about hopefully our get out of jail free card, but the other thing,
Some of us. I didn't proposition anybody. I just want to be clear on that.
but we also have the Rat Packettes here. How y'all doing?
Fantastic, boys.
Good morning, everyone.
I think Teresa was just processing being called a mouse,
girl.
a mouse setter,
Yeah, there you go.
Whatever it is.
whatever it was.
And Kobe
a rat
Reynolds.
packette.
Usually, and you guys missed the howl. I usually am pinching Chris, and then Joe feels his pain and howls
That's
at
what
the
it
moon,
is.
but it didn't happen.
But and then I'm the lucky one because all the ladies are over on this side.
Yes,
with me.
I noticed
I know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you pulled that off.
I'm just honored to be at this end of the table here.
Hey,
I'm gonna get
exactly.
evidence
You'd
of
better
this.
evidence this.
I was stuck over here with Rob and Jay, and so I brought Kobe over on this end to balance all this guyness out over here, and then I started messing with the headphone wire. I look up, and you got her. I don't even know how that happened. It was like a magic trick.
You've got
No.
the intelligence down at that end of the table.
Yes.
Anyway, we also have Kobe Reynolds in
You
the
are
house,
correct,
who is,
sir.
with OneGuard, one of our great sponsors. So thank you for being here this morning.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, so we're
Best home warranty in town.
Yes, we had a conversation about this one time about the quality of the warranty.
Yes,
And-
absolutely.
And it was Lee Brockstein had made a comment about that, and we're not going to bring that back up.
Yeah.
Anyhow, in the house today is my state rep from District 133, Jim Murphy. Welcome to the show.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Like I said, we've been talking for a long time about coming on the show, and he was willing to come on. And there's a couple of things. You had a nice gig with the West Chase. You were in charge of West Chase for, what'd you say, 20 years
20
now?
years,
To
yeah.
celebrate
Mhm.
the 20-year anniversary. And so talk a little bit about West Chase, what's going on in West Chase, how close to completion is it, or
Right.
are we already revitalizing it with tearing things down and adding new?
Well, we're always revitalizing. So, West Chase started in the 70s, Rob. And so, the district came along in 95 to help that area continue to grow and also to help it redevelop. And that's really our big mission right now. There's lots of neat, cool stuff being built. We're building about 3 million square feet of office. We've got a couple thousand residential units underway. But more importantly, we're talking about knocking down old projects like Tinseltown West Chase and people replacing with higher and better use.
I miss Tinseltown.
Well, a lot of us do, but I'll tell you, now we've got thousands of jobs and millions of dollars worth of investment sitting on that same site, and our efforts at West Chase District have helped bring that about because you're right, a lot of it is built out. We're about 90+% built out, 95% occupied overall, but there are opportunities in those good areas to take out an old 2-story apartment complex and put something bigger and better in place.
Yeah, I've watching them. Of course, we listened to you, Ed, Emmett, and all those people talking about how many people are moving into the Houston area. And I was looking at some stats when I was reading about Proposition 1. It said, by 2040, we're going to have 40 million people in Texas, which is an additional 18 million people. So we got to put them somewhere.
It's kind of incredible. You have 1,000 or 1,200 a day, right? And they all come with cars, I think. and they drive
Every
around.
single one of them.
According to the stats I read, everyone in Texas, everyone has 1.1 car.
Yeah, actually have more cars than we do people that drive.
Now, how do you get a .1 car, by the way?
I'm not sure.
Those are called smart cars.
Yeah, those-
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, or Priuses. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
That's a
So-
.2 car.
Anyway, and so in West Chase, you're about 97. Are you all doing other projects, or are you looking at other type of things around town, or?
No, we're just so happy to see what's going on there. There is always going to be growth and interest, and we talked to people the other day who want to build a very major apartment tower out there.
that'd be
So
awesome.
we're seeing some of the stuff that's sort of in the closer in areas move out our way and become more urban.
Yeah,
What's
it's my
amazing
hood.
about what's amazing about that we were talking about right before the show is 20 years ago I never forget because I for the longest time lived between Gessner and Westheimer and Derry Ashford and Richmond and Westheimer in that area. So it seemed like one day I was driving by, all of a sudden it's like, welcome to West Chase District. And I was like, wow, that's interesting when this happened. And then 20 years later, look at what's happened. I mean, I used to go to that Tinseltown all the time. Now you have these great, beautiful buildings, as you mentioned right there, but there's still a lot of opportunity, as you mentioned, even though 95% of it's built out. Still have opportunity
I officed
for
there for a long time
redevelopment.
when I was home building and developing back in the 80s. The building with the fountain in the front.
Right.
That was my office building. It was a
Right.
great location.
Well, it's funny because the area continues to evolve as one thing moves out, something else moves in. If you have a strong area, the natural tendency is just to see that continue upgrade. So we're the classic overnight success story that took 20 years.
20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
I remember meeting Jim back in the early 90s when I was a member of West Houston Chamber of Commerce.
Right,
Remember
Jim.
that?
You sure
It was
do.
kind of a precursor to the West Chase movement. And I've seen a lot of growth when I was building my practice back then. I was drawn towards West Houston Chamber of Commerce to meet new people. And it really was fantastic.
It's still a very active chamber.
Yeah, no, they are. They're doing a great job for the community.
So you've got this great gig and you've got this great development, and you're all of a sudden thinking, I just don't have enough aggravation. I think I'm going to get into politics. So when did you make this decision?
Well, it's kind of funny. It's an evolution because anybody in the real estate business understands the impact of government regulations, taxes, whether it's land use policies, where you build roads, what you incentivize. And as I saw these things affecting us, it became, well, who are those guys that are doing this stuff? And who elects them? And how do they get where they are? And what I found is they're just good people that care about the community, that want to serve.
It's
And
not the pay.
No, unless you don't need much money.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if everyone knows that, but a state rep gets $7,200 a year. So that's $600.
Yeah, Rob.
What are you doing with all the rest of the money?
And that's what I say. We don't earn that, but we get paid that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a labor of love when you
It
do
is,
that.
and so the people that do it, and I'll tell you, we get bashed as politicians at whatever level, but most people
Some
do
of them deserve it, by the way.
Some do, but you really see people that want to see a better Texas long term, and they're willing to spend their nights and weekends getting yelled at to make it happen, because we recognize if you have that ability, you should serve.
Yeah. Well, transportation has always been kind of an issue for me, and I always kind of think about, we originally designed the gas tax to pay for our roads, and all of a sudden monies are being diverted from that fund to, of course, we had to fund the state police and things of that nature. But now we have to find that we are way behind in our infrastructure. Now we need money, and I think that's the purpose of Proposition 1.
Proposition 1 is a great idea that allows us to build roads without raising taxes and without taking any money out of the rainy day fund. But just real quick, Rob, the scenario for gas tax, if we have a little moment here, is that we're driving
This is
more.
your time.
We're driving more miles, but because we're all getting better mileage in our cars, and gas tax is per gallon, not per dollar. So when gas goes from $2 to $4, it doesn't double. In fact, you use less because it costs more. And so we're having people driving more, generating fewer dollars. And that, if I were drawing you a chart here, you would see the one line of demand moving up and the line of supply, that being dollars, moving flat, and the gap getting larger. And so we're government, Rob. We could raise taxes till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But we said, hey, wait a second. The energy industry is booming. Why not use some of these severance taxes and build roads that way? And so it's going to be about $1.7 billion a year in cash for new roads, new free roads, no toll roads, in Texas.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
There is a God.
Well, Chris, it's funny because we're kind of PTSD after the Trans-Texas Corridor. I helped lead the fight to stop that back in Senate Bill 792 a couple years ago.
I remember.
And we had to actually go back for an extra special session 2 years ago in the summer because we had that squabble over toll roads. And some people wanted them and some people didn't. We said, look, we cannot ask the voters to allow us to get tax dollars to build toll roads.
Right.
Yeah, and so we made that decision.
Well, I remember the referendum that allowed to take toll, and we're not going to talk about toll roads because that's not his bailiwick. But they had a referendum, and they did a great spin in the paper about what it was going to do. But what it did is allowed to take the revenues from one toll road to pay for other toll roads or future projects, which to me is a tax without going back to the constituency.
Right, and we've all learned a lot more about toll roads as they've gotten marched out with different entities operating them and different financial investors as part of them. And government sometimes actually does do things better than the private sector when it comes to protecting taxpayer interests, because when they talk about raising taxes on the Harris County toll roads, everybody calls their commissioners and the phones light up and the commissioners go, I was just thinking about it. I wasn't actually going to do it. And
Every
that's where you have
time,
the
every time I
control.
see Ed Emmett, he says, I don't want to talk about toll roads. Call the toll road authority. Because he gets pretty bashed.
Well,
on toll
our
roads.
system in Harris County is the model for the state. It's locally controlled, right?
Right.
And so that's where you really want to have that element.
And you know what? I don't object to use tax. Basically, that's how I look at a toll. If I'm using, I don't mind paying for it. So I'm not unhappy with the toll system. We would not have had the Sam Houston Tollway without it being a toll system, period. Anyway, but let's get back to the things that you have some ability to vote upon. And Proposition 1 is of course, Houston Association of Realtors is also supporting.
Yeah, let me add something to the Prop 1 conversation, Rob, and it's what it means to me and the other members of the Harris County delegation or the Greater Houston region of legislators. You know, we have 1 out of 6 legislators from Harris County in Texas. 1 out of 6.
1 out of 6.
Yeah, 24. We ought to be swinging a pretty big bat in Austin. We don't always if we're not united. And one of the things we're trying to do right now is to bring more of those transportation dollars to Houston. So of that $1.7 billion, how much will come to Houston? I can't tell you because that decision's not been made.
I think we should get 1/6 of it.
I think we should get about 1/4 of it. If you look at
Right.
Because when you look at things like the Port of Houston, you look at our level of congestion, you look at our share of state GDP, our piece of the economy, you could argue for a larger piece. But here's my deal. People in this region have to vote for Prop 1 in good numbers. If we vote 52% for and the rest of the state votes 63%, my colleagues will say, Jim, it looks like your people don't care very much about transportation. And so we've got to make sure we all get out in Harris County and vote for Prop 1.
Yeah, and if we're going to have 18 more million people on the road, which with 1.1 car each, that's a lot of cars coming on.
Yeah, well, and the other side is, think what the Port of Houston's going to cause when we get the Panama Canal expansion. And the Port of Houston's a huge economic driver. It's great for this region. But all that increased traffic of trade and commerce, which is a great problem to have, one of our jobs as policy leaders is to identify issues before the public experience them, hopefully. Haven't quite gotten that done on traffic, but when you see it growing, you've got to get ahead of it with solutions.
Yeah. Well, Prop 1, like I say, it's important. We're getting out and stomping, the grassroots to get people to vote for Prop 1 because we need the infrastructure. And if it's not going to be another tax.
Well,
so
and that's
tell me how that works.
Well, because what we're doing is we have the opportunity to take money that would normally flow into the rainy day fund, now that it's at $8.4 billion. So when the fund was started, they thought, we ought to have a savings account of maybe $1 or $2 billion. Now it's $8 billion. And we said, okay, full, it's good. Let's take the money we're currently collecting and do something with it that's meat and potatoes, critical issue for government, and that's building roads. Let's send that. Now, many people will tell you, well, we need more. Absolutely true, and we're going to be looking for it. Stop the diversions will help. Maybe some of the sales tax on car will help. But right now, let's take a $1.7 billion bite out of what's a $4 or $5 billion need.
It's a start.
Oh, it's a tremendous start.
And it's a great start like that. And so the other thing I always like to talk about is mass transit. If the state looking at, we're talking about doing a high-speed rail between Houston and Dallas and things like that.
The beauty of the high-speed rail, it's private. And I don't really want to see our state involved in those kind of business ventures. There's plenty of people. Those are multinational companies that will invest.
You can't go from Houston to Dallas without getting government involved because you're going to have a lot of right-of-ways going through a lot of little areas. And so I don't know how.
Well, if they're willing to work with people, they can buy it. Yeah. And that's what I think is a good program. Let those good rural folks make a little money. If they have property that's in a corridor that has demand, then they should benefit from that.
Here's a little something if it doesn't make you want to go out and vote. It says Texans waste 44 hours stuck in traffic each year.
I'm not surprised at one bit.
It's time for us to move Texas forward by voting yes on Texas Proposition 1.
Well, I think there's a study out of A&M that said there's been 44 hours of delay a day, but that was A&M.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
You had to get that.
Yeah, I think we're going to kind of come up a break.
We are coming up against a break. We are having a great time. If you want to call in, ask a question, 800-808-5548 is the call-in number.
We're talking to Jim Murphy.
Talking to Jim Murphy, and I want to give a big shout-out to my mother whose birthday is today.
Oh.
I was that's the reason why I was running a little late this morning and giving her a big shout-out. But, Mom, happy birthday. For everybody else, stay tuned. We're going on a break. We'll be right back.
My heart won't let my feet do things that they should do. You know what? You're lovely. You know what? You're so lovely. And oh, what you do to me. I'm like an ocean wave.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
Oh,
And we're back.
almost caught us again. Good grief.
Absolutely. I got a squeal for you?
Latin Martian.
Your Latin Martian. That is correct.
So,
I always forget about that.
As the rest of Houston tries to figure that out.
Yeah. Call in and we'll explain. I do want to do a shout out to Ashley Bowles, who was kind enough. His mom came from Nova Scotia, brought us 45 pounds of lobster, and it was delicious.
It was incredible.
Not only the best home inspector in town, the best lobster prepper in town.
He did a great job. Well, I am extremely excited to have a longtime dear friend. I've done all of Jay's real estate over the last 20 years, and Jay Karahan, or Judge Jay Karahan, I apologize, I didn't mean to be disrespectful.
I'll be the judge of that.
You'll be the judge. Wow.
Yes, he'll be the judge of that, Rob.
Judge for Harris County Criminal Court number 8.
Thank you,
Well, I got
Rob.
that right. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be here.
It's good. So, we talked about you oversee a lot of cases about drugs, alcohol, and things like that. And so we're talking about roads and transportation and Prop 1. And you had a great point on the break talking about the number of car dealerships and the number of sports venues and what kind of impact that has on when people are driving and how they're driving.
I just want to point out here that Rob mentioned he's been very long-term friends with him. So
Yes.
he oversees a lot of cases of drugs and alcohol.
And Rob, you would know, right?
and
Joe, you're right there along with
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
no, that's why I don't misbehave.
Hey, that's why we have a limo service as a sponsor.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's why when he walked in this morning, he's like, I recognize you.
So let's talk about what you do and how it ties into the community.
All right. Well, I am judge of a court that has countywide jurisdiction over jailable misdemeanors. So we're not talking about traffic tickets, so I can't help you guys on that. All right.
Take it.
We call Sullivan.
I
There
want
with
my
that
money
plan.
back,
Yeah,
Rob.
I'm leaving the show now.
and the number one case statistically that's filed right now is drug possession. Number 2 is DWI. Number 3
Wow.
is theft, and number 4 is domestic violence. And so we were talking about DWI and why do we have rising rates of DWI despite the fact
People are drinking.
but despite the fact that we have so much knowledge about DWI, it's in the newspapers. We have Mothers Against Drunk Driving out there, ringing the bell and saying, "Hey, we got to do something about it." And it keeps going up. Why? Well, we have 665 square miles of roadway in Houston. We have a car dealership every 3 or 4, 5 miles. We have an ice house every mile. We have 4 sports venues in town and very little mass transit. And you compare a city like us to Chicago, L.A., these other large cities would have similar types of venues, and they don't have the kind of problem we have. Houston and the surrounding metropolitan area has the highest number of alcohol-related traffic fatalities in the country. It is a stat
Wow.
that we must turn around and we must do something about.
I saw 2 accidents on my way here this morning. Like one, they were on the feeder road and they ran into a business, and the other one ran into the guardrail under the bridge. And I mean, I'm assuming that they probably were alcohol related because it was 7:30 this morning coming into Houston, and 2 accidents, separate accidents.
People think that DWI happens mostly at night. Well, yes, you could say that, but it's happening in the daytime, and we're getting lots of defendants who are presenting alcoholic conditions in the morning before going to work. We're seeing accidents happening on the way to work caused by intoxicated drivers.
Jay, we
Going
just
to
had
work.
some data for West Chase District trying to do some mobility stuff, and they classify accidents. And one of the categories for accidents was hitting a fixed object.
Yes.
It was a huge percentage of accidents. And you
I
think,
had no idea.
come on, get your act together.
That's right.
Yeah, we were trying to get Joe to get back and go to one of his driving courses, but this hasn't worked too much.
Yeah, well, we laugh about it, but seriously,
I haven't hit anything in weeks.
But it's very
That's
serious.
'cause you've got a cane.
Yeah.
You hurt yourself. You got bit by a lion, remember?
let's respect the narrative here. And, I'd like to get some numbers if you have some round numbers and is what we're seeing each year in DWIs.
The number of cases that each of the 15 county courts, like mine, there are 14 others like County Criminal Court number 8 with countywide jurisdiction, we're getting a minimum of 5,000 new cases every year. But in that breakdown, 1 drugs, 2 DWI, 3 theft, and 4 the domestic violence cases. So you multiply 5 times 15, it's 75,000 new cases every year that are filed.
that's 5,000 per court then.
No, 5,000 per
Oh
court.
my gosh.
Good night.
That's a huge
Wow.
number. I had no idea. So
That
that's
is
a systemic
amazing.
issue. And so let's talk about something, maybe what is a great resolve. You had some programs you were talking about this morning?
In 2008, the county criminal courts got together based on some legislation that gave us incentive to charge a certain fee to establish what's called a sober court or a DWI court. We've all heard of drug courts, right? Well,
Right.
We've been talking and trying to get with Commissioner's Court and the state legislature courts that will deal with recidivist DWI defendants. That's people who repeat DWIs. And many of these folks have
Call them
come.
the
They're
frequent
frequent
flyers, right?
flyers.
Yeah.
It's like a revolving door for some of these folks. So we established what's called a therapeutic plan, a probation plan, 2008, where if you have a previous DWI within 3 to 5 years, you will be put into a special program where you have to go to programs, classes. You meet with the judge twice a month. You go through phases, and you have to earn your way through the phases. In the beginning of the program, you wear a scram bracelet around your ankle. What it does is it detects alcohol in your system, so you can't use it. If you have any and it goes in your system, it sends a radio signal to the home office. They let the judge know within 24 hours, and you're in front of the judge very soon after that. And there are sanctions and so forth. So folks have to earn their way through it. They have to earn having the bracelet taken off in the 3rd phase, and then they can earn getting their driver's license back in the 4th phase. And it's been very successful. The success rate is approaching 70%,
Awesome.
and that is off the charts. I mean, regular probation successes are hovering around 40 to 50%, if that much. So it's a better success rate. Why? Because the judge is actively involved in these cases, meeting these individuals each 2 weeks. They come in and meet the judge, and they get the distinct impression that the judge is interested in their case and wants them to be successful. We cheer them on. We give them incentives. We give them rewards, food cards, things like that. When they're doing well, we give them little chips and little stuff that makes them feel like they're making progress. This whole business is about getting sober first, then recovering. It's a 2-step process. And for some of these folks, it's a lifelong process. And many of them come back to give speeches to our new classes to say, this works. Work the program.
Well, Jay, you guys in Harris County have done a great job. I'm pleased you noted that it began with legislation, but then you crafted it and made it work for the people in Harris County, for our judges, to relieve some of that load, to keep us safer. And I just think that's a really good example of how laws are supposed to be taken care of. We pass them, and then the judiciary goes and molds them to make them appropriate for their area. You don't get to write the law. I don't get to craft it. But between the two of us, we work things out, and that's really appropriate. And I tip my hat to you and
Thanks, Jim.
our Harris County judges. That's
Thanks.
a great program.
And what you gave us was to give us a percentage of the fees that are collected on these DWIs. The legislature did that so that this money could go back into the program and help fund the programs. Of course, we're always looking for grant money out there, but that's another day.
What type of pressure does that put on your schedule? I mean, have all these people are going to start participating.
We have
in
a regular court time. We only have 5 of these courts right now. I had one of the first 5 pilot courts in 2008, and because of funding issues unrelated to legislation, Jim, they had to take my court away for a little while, and I am in line to get another court after the first of the year. But we have added 5 courts during that process. We have now 5 full courts, and one of them is a Hispanic-speaking court, so that the judge speaks Spanish, and all the folks that are running it speak Spanish. It's a great court. One of our judges is starting an all-women court, so that women can go and talk about what's going on and not feel self-conscious about what's happening. And we might even start an all-guys court. Maybe that will be my court in January. Who knows?
Oh, wow.
But the bottom line is it's something for everybody. and it works. It's a program that works. And if you ask anybody that's involved in the drug court programs, they really are very successful because it's just an all hands on deck kind of program to get folks past their drug and alcohol problems.
And I got a question. One of the things you mentioned obviously drug related number one, DWI number two. Mm-hmm. What can we do? What can we do to stem it happening from to begin with? Obviously, we have a lot of times you got individuals out there in the DWI your first timer is what I'm saying. Obviously, one of the things that I'm always conscious of. I am not a drinker. I gave up drinking a long time ago. I might have one casually here once in a while. But I will tell you, never forget, I almost got a DWI in Austin, Texas 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was not a lot of fun to have to go through that. Never did get one, lucked out that somebody was robbing a store as the police officer was pulling me over, so that took precedence on that. But it scared the crap out of me, And so at the end of the day, yes, you can say that part. And it scared me enough that I never did it again. In fact, it scared me to stop drinking, to be honest with you. And so what can we do? What programs are out there educational wise or considering to stem, the first time, I guess, offender is what can we do?
Well, DOT have these amber signs on all the major roadways that say drink, drive, go to jail. Okay. That's
right.
Not getting folks' attention because they're still doing it. I think those signs should stay there because a lot of folks do see them and go, I better watch how much I have to drink at dinner tonight or at the sports game or whatever. But it really is a personal choice. People have to decide, am I going to be selfish about this tonight and not call a cab or not call Uber or somebody to come pick me up or take me from my house to the fun place and back? Or am I going to just go ahead and say, I'm going to blow it off, I think I'm fine, and not spend $40 or whatever it is, and then they get picked up for DWI, and it costs them $15,000 after it's all over and
Absolutely. And a lot of times, a lot worse than that because
or
sometimes individuals get hurt. Obviously, there's deaths associated with it. You can never bring somebody back from that.
That's true.
That is hard.
Highly recommend Uber. You can get them on your phone.
Right.
Hit the app. Uber will show up, take you.
We just lost all of our cab company sponsors.
Right.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
I'm amazed at how many people I talk to who are convicted of DWI, and I talked to every one of them, and I said, did it occur to you that while you were driving around after your big night out, that there were breadwinners out there, folks driving to and from work, even at 2 a.m. in this big city, and if you took one of them out, they've got a family that's going to be without a breadwinner, a dad, a mom, or whatever, and they look at me and go, "Wow, I didn't even think about that."
That is just what happened to that deputy who was a single father, and the gal drugs were found all in her car, and she's, thank goodness the judge did not release her on bail because she was out of prison on probation for drugs.
Parole. We're coming against a break once again.
Once again, time flies when you're having fun or talking about a subject matter that we're all very passionate about. We are all passionate about this, so we want to continue on this conversation. We have to take a break right now. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
The room was completely black. I hugged her, and she hugged back. Like the sailor said, quote, ain't that a hole in a boat?
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we are back, having a good time as usual. More importantly, talking about some subject matters that we're all very, very passionate about. One of the things we were talking about here right before the break was in regards to what's going on with the Harris County court system, and more importantly, specifically to your court and, drug-related and DWI and how important it is, obviously, on the DWI side of things to make sure that we, can stem that. It goes it goes beyond just the first timer and the second timer. It's livelihoods that are in place, and so it's something very passionate that we're all talking about. But Rob, we actually have a caller right now.
Yeah, with our caller right now is somebody who is working on a great project. And we support a lot of charities, and this is Scott Mandel. He's with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Anderson Properties, out in Arcadia office. He's online. You there, Scott?
I am, Rob. How are y'all this morning?
Doing great. Listen, we have a big event happening. I know you were in charge of it and doing a lot of work. Talk a couple of minutes about that event and where it is, when it is, and how people can go to it.
The event is called the Redneck Gala. It is a benefit for the Sunshine Kids. It'll take place tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the Redneck Country Club on West Airport Boulevard.
That's Michael Berry's club, is that right?
Yeah, that's Michael Berry's club. It's an event that's open to the public, so it's a rare occasion where the public can actually come to and see what the RCC is all about. The event's free to attend. Tracy Bird and Stephen Chadwick will be providing the entertainment for the evening, and we will also be serving food at the event. So it's catered. Everybody can come get a free dinner, enjoy a free show, and help us support the Sunshine Kids.
I think it's a great cause. We've raised a lot of money this year for Sunshine Kids, and hopefully this event will be as equally successful as our other events and things like that. Is there an address that we have for that club?
Yes, I think it's 11107 West Airport Boulevard.
It's very close to. It's not very far from the intersection of 59 Southwest Freeway and West Airport. It's right there in the Meadows or Stafford.
Just south of 59
right.
On West Airport. They can also check us out and get the address at www.theredneckgala.com.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you got to love it.
They're also on Facebook, right? Might want to point out.
We are on Facebook, facebook.com/TheRedneckGala. We're also on Twitter @TheRedneckGala. It's an event that I hope is going to take off this year. It's the first annual, and we hope to do it every year from now on. Well, it's very passionate to me because having met some of these kids, the Sunshine Kids, spokes kids.
Well, Scott, I brag on you, Scott, all the time because Scott has actually stepped up and said to our agents, I will match all of our agents' contributions up to $40,000. He's the one that he won the motorcycle and donated it back.
I did. In fact, we'll be auctioning that motorcycle off
for a second time. Huh?
Yep, we are. We're going to auction it off tomorrow night, along with. I think we're approaching something like 60 silent auction items now as well.
Awesome.
So it's going to be a fun time.
It'll be a fun time. So how much if I want to win that Harley? What's a ticket going to cost me?
The tickets are free. We had Michael Berry and.
I meant for the raffle. For the raffle.
Oh, there's no raffle. It's an auction.
Oh, it's just an auction. Oh,
yep.
Awesome.
It's a straight auction.
Better.
I'm going to put my $100 bid in right now. That's cash money.
Okay, Scott, I'm going to beat him. I've got the $200 bid in then.
There we go. Do I hear 10,000?
201.75.
There we go.
Well, anyways, Scott, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate it.
500 from the judge.
And again, that's Scott Mendel with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Anderson Properties, working passionately for Sunshine Kids out there at the Redneck Bar right there in West Airport at 59 in Stafford.
Thanks, Scott.
Show up. It's free. Free food.
Free. I'll be there.
There'll probably be a lot of us agents there.
All right, guys. Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Scott.
Of course.
All right, bye-bye.
That is awesome. Well, that's all. One of the things we talk about. It's always a great cause. Sunshine Kids out there. We've done a lot of stuff with them here at the studio. Me personally, obviously through Berkshire Hathaway. Joe, obviously through the RPM events. So we're a big supporter of charities, and it's always good to get somebody on to talk
I've
about
got to
that.
say, Chris, you talk about is it Redneck Gala? It's
the Redneck
like
Gala.
A black tie tractor pull. I'm not really sure that those go together.
That's funny. That's funny. So anyway, this is the kind of time where we want to do open forum that we can kind of talk openly, and we're talking about some of the programs that you're involved with.
One of the things we were talking about during the break, and I think Jim, you had spoken about this. You wanted the judge to talk a little bit about some items that are going on and some opportunities to really get some messages out there about what's going on.
Well, and I think it's critical because we have a Harris County DA, Devin Anderson, who has come up with an idea that I think is it's high time. No pun intended. To try to find a way to maybe be a little more responsive to the conditions we have in urban areas. And it talks not so much about the significance of a crime, but about how we want to allocate resources. The old saying of, who are we mad at and who are we scared of? Mm-hmm. So, Judge, would you mind talking, Jay, about what's going on?
The courts have jurisdiction over marijuana cases, of course. And the cases that I hear are typically under 2-ounce possession of marijuana. And the district attorney, Devin Anderson, started planning a program early this year to divert first-time offenders who possess small amounts of marijuana under 2 ounces was the cutoff. And she had designed a pilot program along with Sheriff Adrian Garcia and the chief of police of Houston Police Department to divert these first-time offenders, and first time means first time. I mean, never been in trouble before. So once somebody is arrested by a police officer based on probable cause, or the officer has to have probable cause to stop him and arrest him, then this person will be taken to a substation and fingerprinted to make sure they're not wanted for murder or some serious crime out of state.
This isn't your traditional concept of, I'm going to just write you a traffic ticket,
No.
quote unquote, and let you go with a slap on the wrist. It's still a slap on the wrist, but there's something behind it.
What happens is you're taken down the substation, and if you're clear, they give you a piece of paper, and you're released at the substation, and you have 3 days to go to the pretrial services agency, look at the program, and then agree or not agree to go into the program. And it's basically a 3-month diversion program where you do community service, take a class, and if you do it successfully, the case is never filed, and it's not on the person's record ever. They don't have a criminal record after that. The opponent's program talks about giving these folks a ticket, a citation. Well, we know from statistics out of Austin, which use the cite and release program, that anywhere from 40 to 45% of the folks who receive tickets on marijuana possession cases don't come back to court. They just forget about it. Maybe they were still sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and having another bong. But the bottom line...
I wanted to come, but then, I didn't want to.
Orange
But I didn't want to drive and get busted.
But the DA's program has accountability to it. And yes, the person is cuffed and stuffed, but maybe there's a teaching lesson in that to the individual so that they go, I don't want that to happen again.
Well, you guys have understood it's not just about punishing people. It's about getting them to change the way they're living.
Precisely.
So they don't repeat the cycle.
Exactly.
And that's what I think this program really talks about, which is a little bit smarter, perhaps a little bit better informed than some of the other alternatives that are out there.
That sounds like a great idea because, like I say, allocating resources. I have a feeling that as a county, that we spend an inordinate amount of resources on small cases.
I want to tell you about that. I started doing a straw poll about 1.5 years ago on the number of grams that were seized in each of these marijuana cases. And the average is anywhere from 3 grams to 7 grams that person possessed when they were arrested. Well, I have 15 to 20 of these cases on my docket every day. All right. So think about it. In each one of those cases, the police officer arrested the individual, took him downtown, booked him, went through all that process. That's a 3 to 5 hour process. I've seen it. I've been down at Central Intake and watched that happen. If you can short-term that and then just say, take them to the substation and then let them go, that's maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half of time, okay? And then the officer can then, go back out on the street and look for burglars and robbers and rapists and use better police resources.
If you've ever done a ride-along with an HPD officer, you will find out that all they do is answer priority 1s and 2s. They're just running call to call to call, and they don't do much policing. Same for the courts. You'll ask for charges to be taken on a case, and, we're kind of full up, don't know if we're going to have a space for these people. I've had a bill the last couple of sessions to get a repeat misdemeanor enhancement, sort of like the felony deal, 3 strikes you're out kind of deal. And we get resistance, Jay, often from the counties who say, Jim, we'd like to keep those bad guys in jail, but the jails are full. So you guys are coming up with an answer here in Harris County to clear space for the repeat offenders, the one that make us change our lives.
And in that regard, we now have a mental health jail diversion program that has been
this is
up
really
and running.
savvy. Talk about that, Jay, because this is another innovation you guys have come up with here.
Judge Emmett came up with this idea a few months ago and got together with the Criminal Justice Planning Council, the courts, and so forth to come up with a plan because we have a revolving door with mental health defendants. And we know from being in the program, being in the courts, that probably 1/3 to 4, maybe a half of the people in jail have mental health issues. Well, they don't need to be in jail. They need to be stabilized, get back on their medication. Maybe they won't break the law again. So what we're doing is we got a program, and we have 52 people in it now, and it's going to be used more and more in the courts. County Court 8, my court, is one of 3 pilot courts that will be using this to see if the program works. And it's Court 5 and Court 15 as well. Judge Hughes and Judge Harris, the 3 of us are going to be doing that. Get these people stabilized so that they're not the revolving door mental health folks that we keep seeing.
48 of those 52 are realtors.
Wow. and the rest are all care people.
Because everybody knows you don't have to be crazy to be a realtor, but it helps.
Yeah. It's really good to see government start to do some common sense decision making. So we look at the government a lot of times going, what were they thinking? And because you get this amalgam of ideas, and you try to cobble it together, and all of a sudden it wasn't the original intent.
And this comes back to a message which is elect good people and let them make some good decisions. You cannot screw everything down so tight and say you must always do this or never do that, because you find in the iterative real world there's data that comes in, there's experiences that are relevant, and people need to take those into account and make good policy.
I think what you guys are talking about right here is a perfect example of why government was always intended to be a local power. Everything y'all just described was looking at local issues.
The closer you are to the issue, the
yeah,
better
absolutely. The
informed
better
you are.
informed you are. You're talking about being down at the station and watching what's going on from a legislative perspective and judiciary perspective. Sorry. I got legislative over here to my
Legislative
left.
judiciary.
And we have the executive in the middle.
Godfather of real estate.
Right. And seeing that you're able to craft and mold and shape the way that these policies are being put into practice, that's the way it's intended to work. I think it's really cool.
I think it's great. We have 15 more minutes of great subject about to come up, but before then, we have to take a break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Then let it rise for 100 years or two, and that's a recipe for making love. It doesn't need sugar, cause it's already sweet. It doesn't need an oven, cause it's got a lot of heat.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we are back. We are live again. 15 minutes more of fun and entertainment and great information
Well,
going
and
on.
a lot of times on the break, I always get great information. I'm sitting here talking with Jim Murphy over here, and I was talking about what's coming up legislatively that might impact real estate, and he said, that Texas is basically taking not a laissez-faire, but don't get in the way of business. Now, talk a little bit about that.
Well,
the school program.
Yeah, I was going to say, essentially, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. And our economy is just rocking Texas, and we're seeing lots of new revenues come in, so that's a very good thing. It's tough for us as policymakers. When you're short on money, you just tell everybody no. Now that we have some money, we'll have to kind of pick and choose, and some things will see expansion, and that's a good thing. But the issue I think we're going to spend a lot of time this next session is what happens after this House Bill 5. So last session, we reformatted public education, said there's multiple pathways. It's not four-year degree or drop out. There are a whole series of things in between. And now that we're faced with that program is in its first year, how to get people into the workforce in meaningful careers where they can make money, buy a home, take care of their family, be a good, contributing citizen to society. And that's where we spend a lot of time. So it's talking about the industrial trades, professional certifications, technical degrees, licenses. All those kinds of things need to be better tied together so that the class you take in high school that applies to college, applies to a certificate, can be transferred to another college. We don't want to waste anybody's time in school, and we don't want to waste public or private dollars in the process.
So, and talk about the House Bill 5. Oh, we got a little selfie going on over here.
No.
No.
One of my buddies, Brandon Creighton, is writing in, which is awesome.
Well,
Oops! I think I clicked on his Facebook page to see his wife and kids.
We are an interactive show, by the way.
That's right.
Your shameless plug for the Real Estate Rat Pack on Facebook. You can find the Real Estate Rat Pack on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Real Estate Rat Pack.
There you go.
Now, what Brandon's writing in about is trying to see us raise the floor on the franchise tax. Last session, very important for small business people, not just realtors, but everybody, we did two things. We made the $1 million exemption. Your first $1 million of income is now without any taxes.
Thank God, my $1 million is exempt now.
Now, we did two things, Rob. We made it permanent, so you don't have to wonder every 2 years, oh my gosh, are they going to take that away? No, it's permanent. But we also made it apply to businesses over $1 million, so that we want your business to grow. The deal was if you went to 1.1, you lost your exemption. That makes no sense. So now we incentivize businesses to grow, which is good for the economy and it's good for these businesses.
Yeah, I always think, Texas really does it right. That's why so many businesses are moving to Texas. We have a great atmosphere and landscape out there to have business come in and be successful immediately.
We have a lot of very successful things about Texas, right? Low taxes, good infrastructure, good regulatory environment. We have to pay attention to, and we really are starting to focus on this whole idea of workforce, because if you're a company that needs to hire people, there's got to be people to hire. If you're a company that wants to grow, you've got to have people that can step in and work. And those are the issues that Texas, we have enough people, but the mismatch of skills between what's out there and what people have in skills is significant.
So I haven't gotten any demographics, but the 1,200 people that are moving into the Houston area per day, are they coming in with skill sets? Do they already have jobs? Do we have any kind of numbers on that?
Here's what's amazing. Yeah, here's what's amazing. Texas's unemployment rate hasn't dropped a lick with all these people moving here, meaning the people that are moving here are as employed as the people that are here. So we're talking 90+% with jobs. People are coming to Texas to work and to raise a family and to buy a house and those things that make them part of society. But one of the things we have to remind people of, yeah, you might have come from Michigan and you thought that was pretty nifty up there, but now that you're in Texas, we got this.
Yeah.
And we've got the
Don't
right kind
turn
of
us into
policies.
Michigan.
Yeah.
I just, for the love of God, please leave your politics there. A very good friend of mine has a large company that's relocating from California to the Dallas area because the philosophical properties of our state more closely align with his than California's. So Texas is definitely drawing the businesses and
well, you cannot tax your way to prosperity.
Yeah.
I mean, it just never has happened, and I see states that are doing that or having struggling. And Michigan had other issues other than their politics. I mean, the car industry fell apart, and there's a lot of things like that. And of course, we are enjoying the robust success of oil right now, and fracking is a huge piece. And as long as the EPA doesn't mess with that, I think that's going to continue. And they're making noises, but I'm not hearing that they're actually coming in and trying to shut down the fracking.
Well, I think fracking, the industry is in great shape, but I will tell you the federal government's regulatory intrusions, particularly with the EPA, should be of a concern for Texans simply because we're going to be faced with an administration that's going to be a lame duck administration here in a matter of days. And so what will unfold here in the world of executive orders is of concern. And let me tell you, the folks in industry right now are paying very close attention to that. We're going to be okay in Texas, but we cannot do that without losing our vigilance of what's going on at the federal levels.
And some of those executive orders, constitutionally, I think are going to be challenged. So I'm not sure how that's going to work or how that's going to look.
Well, I hope they are challenged, and you've seen some good rulings coming out of the courts on that, the recess appointments and things like that. So I think that'll be good for Texas, but our congressional delegation has to stand up and fight for Texas.
Yeah, well, I actually tried to get John Culberson on today also, and he was so busy. Of course, he's got a re-election going on,
Yeah, he's scrambling right now. John's a good man and a good member, and I think that we are seeing good news coming out of the Senate, and so we'll all know a whole lot more Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's good. There's some very close races out there, and whether a state's going to go blue or red.
Well, and this comes back to, telling your folks, the listeners out here, that they need to get out and vote. And they need to try to inform themselves, and maybe they'll read something in the paper, maybe they'll read something on Facebook, but they need to recognize their vote matters. We see elections decided by very small margins, and we're talking about policies for the next years that will affect our lives and properties.
Yeah, it really is very important that people do get out and vote, because like you say, some have been very, very narrow margins. In fact, on some of the recounts, we've had somebody declares the winner after somebody else had thought they had won. So it happens, and not necessarily here.
One of our colleagues in 2008, Judge Tad Hallback won by about 180 votes. That was the difference.
Narrow
very narrow.
Out of how many, Jay, countywide?
Something like 600,000 total votes.
Yeah, I mean, you can't imagine that percentage. I mean, the Talmadge Heflin vote race a couple of years, I think, was 13 votes. Mm-hmm. 13.
You can never assume. I tell everybody all the time is, number one, never complain if you haven't gotten out there and voted, because that means you did nothing to the system at all. But number two is get the vote out, because one of the things is your vote, most people sit there and go, it's a done deal. There's never such thing as a done deal. Get out there, exercise your right to vote, exercise your right to make a difference in society.
I think voting is one of those subjects where it's kind of like when everything's going great, that's when people get lazy about paying attention to who is doing what in our state. And it's too easy to just say, "Oh, everything's good. I don't have to worry about it." You have to stay involved. That old saying, "When good, all that is required for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." So we have to stay diligent and make sure that what has led this state to the successes that it has stay in place and stay active on that front.
Yeah, and one of the things I tell everybody, I grew up in Mexico all my life, and so I know what politics is like in Mexico, for example. I also have family members live in California and some other areas, so I know what goes on there. Let me tell you, we are so lucky to be in Texas. on all different levels. You see infrastructure. You see money that is collected that is being put to use in infrastructure. You see individuals that are out there working and making a difference in our society. You see growth. You see the economic viability of not only Houston, which we're fortunate to be in, but all of Texas.
Yeah.
You see different cities and states. So I tell everybody, though, you can't rest on those laurels, though. In order for Texas to continue to be strong, you have to continue to get involved.
That's why I felt very comfortable that Jim Murphy is my rep, because Jim approaches things from a very pragmatic position.
Well, let me just add to that,
sense.
Rob, and thank you for the shout out there. But Chris, it's not just that we're blessed. We have done things with the blessings which we received. And I think it's important people understand that, New York is sitting on tons of natural gas. They choose not to explore it. California, lots of energy resources. They don't want to play with that. As a result, their states are less competitive. Their economies are stronger. Their people are poorer because they don't make the right decisions. And so it's the decisions and policies you make with those resources you have.
But since you've got the mic, we've got like the 3-minute warning. And so what we like to do in this, like the last 3 minutes, is you have a message you want to make sure people hear. So give me your minute and a half.
I will be brief about this, but I love this story. So I tell people, because they'll say, "Oh, Jim, I've already voted for you. It's done. You're in the can." I said, "Good job." I said, "Well, it's not the matter that you give up governing your politicians after you voted. You've got to stay engaged." And I tell the story in my first term, 2007. Every good member keeps track of what people write them about, what they call about, what are the hot topics, and how do people feel about this bill. The number one issue that my people contacted me about was whether or not we ought to allow horses to be slaughtered for human consumption. That was the number one issue.
Really?
And I knocked on 10,000 doors, so I knew this wasn't the real issue, but you had a small group of people who were passionate and organized, and they spoke up. And I would have gone to Austin to legislate about horses, and you know how many horses are in my district? Like very few, very few. The police are riding them, and that's about it. But this speaks to, are you going to let, and I hear from about 1% of my people, are you going to let the 1% speak for you? Or are you going to be the 1% that speaks for 99%? So I just tell people, stay engaged. Don't quit talking to your congressman, your senator, your representative. They listen, and you make more of a difference than you know.
Realtors are good at that. In fact, we're going to be there on the Hill.
Well, your opinion
April 14th.
leaders. Yeah, I'll be there with you. But everybody listening to the show has people they go to church with, they work with, they know in the neighborhood. They need to influence them to influence folks like me.
Jay, what message do you want to leave?
I'm going to dovetail on what Jim just said. It's this government is a government of we, the people, all right? Jim and I are servants. We're not the real leaders. The leaders are the voters. They're the folks that go out and talk to their neighbors, their coworkers. They lead with their vote, okay? And you tell us, the servants, what you want us to do and what your will is and what your priorities are, and that's how that's supposed to work. Thank you very much.
And one of the things we always do, we always leave every show with a great quote. And normally what happens is Teresa Kennedy will actually text me, and that's why. But guess what? We have the great Teresa Kennedy in studio today. Teresa, what's our quote for the week?
Well, I think with the message that we've been hearing about what we, how we need to live our lives and learn from mistakes, with driving under the influence. Life is an echo. What you send out comes back. What you sow, you reap. What you give, you get. What you see in others exists in you. And that is from Zig Ziglar.
Yes. Great quote. Great quote.
That's always a great quote right there. Time flies when you're having fun. We always have a great time here in the studio. If you want to catch more of this show, you can always go online to www.realestateratpack.com. Look us up on Facebook. Get out the vote. It's happening here pretty soon.
Tuesday,
Again, you can't
November
complain.
4th.
That is correct. You cannot complain if you do not exercise your right to vote. Until next time, we are out.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is Frank,
I'm
he's
Dean.
Dean, and I'm Sammy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.